Dear viewers, today we are going to discuss the development of Old English prose. The development of Old English prose took place in England as a result of the Christianization of England. It was delayed because the Germanic peoples remained under the tutelage of Greco-Roman civilization for a long time. English prose began in England in the reign of King Alfred. The king and his associates were eager to familiarize people with the knowledge of antiquity. Latin was the language of the Christian Church, and it was an essential tool in clerical education. King Alfred of Wessex, known in political history for stemming the Danish conquest of England, is even more important in the history of English education and the history of English literature. He realized that Christian culture had its roots in Hebrew, Greek and Latin sources, and that if these were to be made available to the people, an ambitious program of translation into vernacular would have to be undertaken. Alfred was especially concerned with the training of teachers who would all be clerics and whose teaching would be religious. English was necessary as a first step both for priests and laymen. In this connection, Gregory's Cura Pastoralis was translated into English with the help of many scholars. Alfred's next work was the translation of History Against the Pagans. It was produced by a 5th century Latin writer, Paulus Arceus. Arceus chronicles the calamities of mankind from the fall of man to the fall of Rome. The translation of Bede's ecclesiastical history of English people is inspired by Alfred, but not done by him. Alfred's two final translations were of more philosophical works, that of the Consolation of Philosophy of Boethius, a Roman philosopher. It was one of the most popular philosophical works of the Dark and Middle Ages. Alfred's last work was a book of blossoms derived chiefly from the soliloquies of Saint Augustine. It was probably in Alfred's time that the great Anglo Saxon Chronicle was begun. It consists of a series of annals commencing with an outline of British history from Julius Caesar's invasion to the middle of the 5th century and continues to 1154. The continuity of English prose from the Old English or Anglo-Saxon period to the Middle English period is demonstrated by the Chronicle more clearly than anywhere else, and its manuscripts are of prime importance for the student of the English language. The manuscript, known as D, gives a full and lively picture of the relations between England and Scandinavia in the reign of Edward the Confessor. It also gives a most important account of the Norman conquest. Another manuscript, C, gives a vivid account of the conflict with the Danes during the reign of Ethelred the Unready. The latest entry is in a manuscript that was continued at Peterborough. It is for the year 1154. By this time, the English language had developed from the stage we call Anglo-Saxon or Old English into Middle English. By this time too, English as a literary language seemed about to disappear, and English historical prose appeared to have come to an end. It happened as a result of the Norman conquest, which took place in 1066 until well into the 14th century. English remained replaced at the court by Norman French. It was reduced to the status of a rustic speech of a handful of uplandish men. But the tradition did not wholly dry up. It was to emerge again triumphant 300 years after the conquest. After the resuscitation of the English language, English prose rose to new life in the 15th century. Coming back to the Anglo Saxon Chronicle, Alfred's associates were also responsible for the propagation of Anglo Saxon prose. The most notable of all Anglo Saxon writers was Alfric, the great scholar of the 10th century Benedictine Reformation. Alfric also produced a somewhat abbreviated Anglo Saxon translation of the first 7 books of the Old Testament. That is why he came to be called the first English Bible translator. His biblical translation was also significant with respect to its appropriate literary style. Alfric's contemporary Wulfstan is famous for his fiery eloquence. His famous sermon to the English is about doing the will of God on earth. A desperate sense of the imminence of doomsday pervades the whole sermon. The ravages of the Danes at the end of the 9th century had wrought havoc with the organization of the English Church. It was not until the middle and latter part of the 10th century that a real revival of religious learning took place in England. That revival was the work of the great churchman Dunstan, who carried forward the monastic revival. Alfric and Wulfstan extended the range of effective Anglo-Saxon prose, though they were not primarily interested in the vernacular literature. The main thing was to keep up the standard of Latin scholarship among the clergy, and translations for the benefit of the unlearned were considered achievements of minor importance. With that, we conclude the first part of our discussion about the development of Old English prose. Thank you very much.